Hi, everyone. Welcome to Aaron and Justin Talk Sequels. I'm Justin. See, I did it wrong on purpose.
Just messed it up. Let's just get to it.
No,
so we're talking about the last...
You intro the show.
Hey, everybody.
Let's
this
see if you
is
can do
Aaron and Justin Talk Sequels, a movies podcast. This is Justin. Wait, no, that's Justin. That is hard.
That's Aaron. Yeah. All right. Yeah, that was a stupid
That's how you
bit.
gotta say it. You gotta say, like, with me is Justin, or you can just do it all yourself. I'm Aaron. And today we're talking about The Last Crusade, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
This is the episode where we talk about our intro for 15 minutes before we talk about the movie. What are your memories with The Last Crusade?
I don't remember seeing it in theaters at all. I'm sure I just watched it as part of the trilogy. Like maybe my parents watched Indiana Jones, whatever, one of the three, and that just happened to be when I saw it. But I was definitely a kid when I saw it because I was a huge Indiana Jones fan, and it maybe was because of the first movie, maybe because of the second, or this one. I'm not sure what made me a fan, but I remember watching them all concurrently when I was a kid.
This movie is definitely the one that made me a fan. It was perfect for me as a kid because kids are stupid. And this might be the movie that made me like Sean Connery. You know, after this, there's a lot of stuff where he probably didn't deserve me to love him as much as I did, but I kept coming back to this character that he had, playing Indiana Jones's dad.
Well,
he's funny in this. He's witty.
Sean Connery was huge to me too, and it wasn't because of James Bond. Like, I didn't know anything about that. Obviously that was pretty, because I was a Roger Moore guy because my dad liked Roger Moore, so I wasn't too familiar with Sean Connery as James Bond. But yeah, he was in Last Crusade. I mean, The Rock, totally. Sean Connery and The Rock, that might be one of the best Sean Connery movies. And then, you know, he'd pop up here and there.
Last Crusade, always my favorite.
Yeah,
and it's a return to form for the franchise.
For sure.
With Temple of Doom, we saw them go bigger and bolder, and they saw the results, and then they dialed everything back and followed the pattern of Raiders a little closer. Do you ever notice in these movies there's always a respected archaeologist that had done all the work, and then Indiana Jones kind of swoops in, uses their work to complete it? Like, there's other people doing the 95%, sure. And he's doing like the 5%.
Yeah, it's usually people he knows in some way, in some fashion.
Yeah, like in the first movie, it's Marion's dad. Mm-hmm. He was the guy who was in charge of. Yeah, and the second movie, I think they didn't do this.
No,
there was a guy he knew.
Yeah, well, that movie's so different.
Yes.
Like, it's just not like the other ones because it's as we talked about in the last podcast, he just falls into this adventure.
Yes. And they make sure not to do that again. Like with the third one, it's absolutely his dad did all the work and he's gone missing. Mm-hmm. And he's looking for his dad. And then, as we're going to discuss in the fourth one, it's another one of his old research friends has gone missing, and they have to go and figure out what's up. So yeah, this is a real return to form for the franchise, and they're fighting Nazis, and they really take the Nazi thing up another level.
Well, they certainly learned some valuable lessons from the a lot of the negativity, a lot of the complaints that they got from Temple of Doom, in that Nazis are the perfect villain because you can just show them any way you want. You can be so mean to a Nazi because Nazis are the worst thing, right? How can you you can't possibly offend anyone, and that's the problem with Temple, is that it could be a little offensive based on who you want to say is the enemy and who you want to say is a savage or a native or anything. You know, it doesn't always fly, and I think they got some of those complaints. So yeah, you just throw Nazis in there, nobody has a problem with that because you can totally mess with a Nazi, and I love it. But they definitely follow the template set by Raiders, but I do love that they add in the father story, so that adds like another level where Raiders didn't tackle that subject at all. Why don't you like it?
Like
I just don't understand.
Oh, we'll get there.
Okay.
I didn't say I didn't like it.
Okay.
I said it's the worst sequel.
That's whatever you mean by that.
But yeah, the cold open does something fun here because we actually go back in time to see young Indiana Jones, and we learn where he gets his hat. Another one of those.
It's the best opening to any of the Indiana Jones movies. That's what I think. River Phoenix plays him as a younger man. He's like a Boy Scout. And I guess when you're a Boy Scout in the desert area, like Arizona or New Mexico, wherever they are, you go on field trips. And I mean, it's like 1916 or something like that. So yeah, it was very much horseback, going to experience the environment and going to experience nature. So whatever happens, he gets separated from the group. He finds other archaeologists / grave robbers stealing this golden cross that was left by it sounds like some conquistador, right? Who somehow came to New Mexico. I don't really know. I guess that's not, I mean, conquistadors were exploring Mexico and South America, so I guess it stands to reason they could slide up into what is now America too.
Yeah, because I think a lot of that land was originally Mexico, and I think we fought a lot of war, or just one war over it.
Yeah. So but that's where you meet. See, I love the cold open because you don't even need to know who the dude with the rose is. You don't even need to know why that cross is important. You don't need to know any of that. All you do is experience this moment in Indy's life where he becomes who he is destined to be, and he just has this desire to rescue the past, and he steals the cross from the grave robbers. They go on this great chase. It's really fun with the whole circus train thing, the magic box, which is a fun shot because if you watch the shot, it never cuts, so he actually uses the magic box. But then he gets home, meet his father quick, and he loses. And that's what I love about it. And that the dude that looks like who he's going to become gives him the hat and says, "You lost today, but you don't got to like it." And he gives him the hat, and they leave. And then you cut to kind of the present, and he's after the cross again. It became this lifelong obsession with him to get that cross amidst all of his other adventures, finding the lost ark, saving that village from the temple and everything. Yeah. It's great.
So, I mean, in this context, he is straight up breaking onto this guy's boat to steal something that is legally this guy's. And then his actions result in that guy dying.
Yeah.
Because his
it's like
boat
a dark
explodes.
turn, isn't it? But I like to think of it more as like Rose Dude, he knew what he was getting into, too. This is archaeology in the world of Indiana Jones. It is a life and death situation. If you want to play the game, you can very well die. And Indy's okay with that. Indy will put his life at risk for the sake of history. And that's the rules they play by, and I'm okay with that.
This cold open also sets up Young Indiana Jones Adventures, a TV show.
Yep.
Did you watch it?
I did. I remember watching a couple of the episodes. Yeah, it was fun. And I mean, this was like the best episode. Was the cold open from this movie was the best episode. And unfortunately, River Phoenix, obviously, he passed away. I don't know if he was ever going to be Indiana Jones in the show. Probably not. Doing movies and then going to do TV back in the early 90s was definitely two separate things. Nobody would do TV if they were a respected actor. So, but anyway, he was by far the best young Indiana Jones. But the show was still pretty good. Yeah, I liked it.
And it also introduces us to the biggest flaw with this movie. These movies have always followed a very loose internal logic where stuff, if you think about it too hard, doesn't really make any sense. And this movie is chock full of it, starting with the magic box in the cold open, where a train transporting this stuff has a magic box built into the train car, and he's able to cut through the bottom somehow. Yeah. Like that train car just happened to have a hole.
Well, I don't know. Maybe the train car was actually the stage. I don't know. Look, I see where you're going with that, but those small little fun set pieces that fall apart when you think about it do not ruin a movie. What ruins a movie is a long, stretched out scene of Shia LaBeouf swinging with monkeys on vines. That ruins a movie.
How dare you?
If he just like grabbed one vine and swung and then a monkey gave him a reaction, I would be like, funny. But they make it such a scene, a set piece. That's where I'm with you in how that logic ruins a movie. These little things, that's par for the course. These are fun little Spielberg things. You don't have to think about them too hard, and they're fun.
I don't consider the mystery box a deal breaker, because that's the kind of internal logic that these other movies use, and you are fine with it.
Right, like Indy pushing the boob statue and finding the hidden place in her room. Like, why would it be there? It doesn't matter. But it doesn't ruin the movie because it's only a little bit. It's only a little thing. But I'm trying not to get worked up.
But when we get to the end of this movie, that's when the internal logic gets so out of whack that it falls apart for me. So yeah, cold open is good. And then we see Indiana Jones being Indiana Jones, teaching at a school, skipping out on his kids because he doesn't give a shit about teaching.
Yeah, they go back. They show him in the private sector doing his thing. Marcus comes in. Marcus is a little goofier in this movie, but it doesn't ruin the character for me. Yeah, but if that was in service of actually having him be more part of the movie than he was in Raiders, I was fine with it because I like Marcus. I think he's a good. He plays a good role in here.
Yeah, I like him. And who else do we have? We have the return of the John Rhys-Davies.
Yeah, he comes. He's a little bit wasted, I feel like, in this movie. He's not as important as he was in Raiders. But we meet Elsa,
the Nazi chick.
Yeah,
is what I call her.
But you don't know she's a Nazi chick. You just know that she's German at the beginning.
Elsa Schneider.
Yeah. So, a big point is that he's at college and he gets this. He got something in the mail. So the kids are always after him, and he just doesn't want to handle it. So he climbs out his window. He's leaving the thing, and he gets picked up by Donovan, which is like this rich dude who isn't like, he would never put himself in danger like Indiana Jones, but he's basically Indiana Jones, that he collects rare antiquities, but he wants to keep them for himself, not give them to museums. And he has Indy kind of snatched in a way, and he gives him the whole thing. He talks about the Holy Grail. This is what the movie is about. He talks about the Holy Grail, the cup that Jesus allegedly drank out of on the Last Supper before he was crucified. So everybody's been searching for the Holy Grail. He has part of a tablet that kind of shows where it is, because there's a legend about 3 knights hundreds of years ago, right? And
from the first Crusade.
Yes, and they found the Grail, and 2 of them left after 100 years or whatever. So they're very old, and they left. And one of them stayed behind to guard the Grail, because apparently the Holy Grail will give you eternal life if you drink from it. But you have to stick with the Grail, or you end up dying. So, one of them went somewhere and left a clue, left that tablet to say where the Grail was, and then another one went to Venice and left a version of the tablet as well to say what it was. So the idea is the shield, right? Let me just sum it up in that Donovan has part of the inscription that tells you how to find the Grail, and they need the other one. So he got a team together with the foremost expert on the Holy Grail search, but now that person has gone missing. And Dr. Jones, Indiana Jones, is like, well, you should have spoke to my father. He's the one that you need to do this. And he's like, we did. He's the team leader. He's gone missing. So that moves the movie along.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense for that one Knight Templar. He was really big on carving into stone, apparently.
I mean, do these things really get to you? These little things?
I put it on my shield. You see how I put it on my shield? I could just put it on your shield, so you don't have to carry this big stone around. Oh, you want to carry the big stone? Okay, well, I mean, that's your thing, man.
These little things really get to you in the movie. You're just like, oh, come on! You're spitting popcorn as you're watching the movie. You're supposed to believe this. I'm like, these things never occurred to me, and nor should they. I feel like you're letting these little tiny things ruin this amazing movie for you.
Again, I like the movie, but looking at it with a critical eye, this one just has way more issues.
Are you forcing yourself to look at it with a critical eye, or do you just cannot help it?
When I'm doing it for the podcast, it's
but I don't look at it like I'm not tearing. I don't see looking at it with a critical eye is not the same as tearing a movie apart. And
I'm not tearing it apart. God.
But you are, because what does it matter if it was on the tablet or on the shield? What does it matter? It doesn't matter.
I'm just wondering about these guys' preferences.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, I just don't know
if
what
the magic box in the train car became the thing that we revisited a couple times throughout the movie, then I would be like, what is with this? It doesn't make any sense. But it was literally there and it was gone. And then you're just like, cool, that's it. Don't let it ruin your experience. I feel for you.
All right, moving on.
He goes to find his dad because apparently he doesn't believe that he was kidnapped. His dad's place is ransacked. It's then he realizes he got a book in the mail. It's his father's journal with all the stuff he's ever learned about the Holy Grail. He sent it to him because he didn't want to, wherever he's kidnapped by whoever, he didn't want them to get hold of the book, and now Indy's got it. So Indy has to complete the mission. But really for him, it's not about finding the Grail. He has to find his father. And that's what he tells Donovan as much, I believe. I'll be your new mission commander, whatever it was, team leader. It's all about finding my father. So he goes to Venice. He meets Elsa, was part of the team as well with his father.
And they start just using the book to pick up the trail and do what his dad would have done. So they go to an old church that's been converted to a library.
Yep.
The people that buried this guy that wandered out of the desert and just kind of died of super old age. They were like, this guy must be really important. Let's bury him in the bottom of this church and point people in the direction of his body by placing
there were a lot of people
X
buried down
into the
there.
tile work. Why wouldn't you just have a door?
Because that wouldn't make an Indiana Jones movie very much fun.
Were they like, okay, we're never going to put a body down here again, and I never want to see these bodies again, so we're just going to wall this off.
I don't know how to argue with it about these things, because
Gonna keep doing it.
these never struck me as beyond comprehension, and that they made no sense. The way that almost everything they do in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull makes absolutely no sense to me. But
See,
The Last
like,
Crusade, I
that-
feel like they do explain these things. I just don't have a memory to say exactly everything about it. But it stands to reason that a lot of people were buried under churches. Important people. He was a knight after all. I don't know who he told his story to, but apparently they believed it, and that's fine. I don't know why it was on a shield. I don't know why it's on a tablet. It stands up to criticism, is all I'm saying. That's my point. So the Roman numeral thing is too simple for me. That's what I never liked about it. Hey, there's an X. There you go. X marks the spot. It's just a little fun little thing. But I think that whole scene serves the librarian stamping the book, and that every time he does it is the exact time that Indy is breaking the ground. Like, that's funny. Like, that's what that scene served to do. Why Indy handed his book off to Marcus and told Marcus to wait up there, I don't know, because then Marcus got stolen. He got kidnapped, right? That was pointless. I'm with you there. Like, it's just one of those things. Hey, wait here.
It's like they had to answer the question, where is Indiana Jones's dad? And they did this whole thing just like they needed an action set piece to get that answer, and I think that's funny.
But the action set piece they move the story forward so well.
Now, this probably doesn't make any sense, but the movies I equate Indiana Jones to, and I don't know if I said this on the last episode, the most are the Fast and the Furious movies.
I don't know, maybe. I've never seen those movies.
Like, I haven't seen those movies either, but they're
then how the hell are you equating
crazy because they're these crazy action movies that are nothing but constant set pieces that move the story forward, and ridiculous things happen in every one. And
well, it became that way. This is what I do know about Fast and Furious, and I did see the first movie, although I have very
me too.
limited memory of it. It started out very street level car kind of movie, but now that it's gone to 9 films, they've done crazier. They're doing the Mission Impossible thing where they got to one-up themselves, and that inevitably over 9 films has led them into crazy territory. But everything that Indiana Jones does, I mean, it's in keeping with the 1930s, really, and just archaeology and adventure movies. Like, they don't go too out there.
Well, no, like I was just thinking more along the lines of they're not as concerned about following a strong internal logic either. Like, I think they're willing to be like, oh yeah, his dad was here in the picture the whole time, and he's been fighting bad guys in Cuba, and now Vin has to go down to Cuba to help his dad, like stuff like that. Like,
oh, I see. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's not anything that grabs me as too illogical in these movies, though. Here's the Indiana Jones logic. He's an archaeologist that grave robs. He's also a teacher. He makes things up as he goes along. He always finds elaborate booby traps and set pieces to figure out in order to find the prize, and then something supernatural happens to wrap it all up. That's the logic.
I'm saying that this movie does the worst job of keeping that logic together. That's all. And my argument is that Kingdom of the Crystal Skull follows that internal logic better than The Last Crusade.
Yeah, I don't think it does at all. Actually, I know it doesn't, but I'll give you the benefit of the doubt to hear your argument about that.
We will get there, okay?
So they're in Venice.
This is our most contentious episode.
No, I'm totally fine with it. You're
so
the one that wants to be
angry
about it.
Oh,
so they're in Venice. I do have a question I've never been able to figure out, because there's this there's the guards of the Holy Grail is kind of what attack them, because they try to stop anybody who gets close to finding it. They're very bad at it.
Yes.
The two of them even get killed following them in the boat. Elsa and Indy have to make a cool escape. They take boats. There's this big boat chase. It's very dramatic. But he finds the one dude in the fez hat. He realizes that, like, okay, he doesn't want to kill me because he understands I'm just trying to find my father, and the Grail just happens to be second on my mind. So he's going to let us go, or we're going to let him go, whatever. How does he know where his dad is?
They've been watching the whole time.
So he knew that the Nazis captured him, and they put him in a castle in Brussels.
It was right on the
like
German
that.
border.
Yeah.
But
how does he know that specifically?
They were like, oh, look, they're kidnapping that guy. You, go with them. Tell me what they're up to.
Okay. That to me is the biggest question I've always had. I've never understood why he knew that. He made him sound like his people were at the castle or something, but we never see that.
Yeah, what's their level of involvement?
Pretty hands-off.
Have they ever seen the Grail? Have they gotten to drink from the Grail because they're the followers? They're like
the descendants or the apostles of these knights, basically. Like
these knights
followed what these knights said. What's that?
Yeah, they followed it.
Yeah, like the knights told them, this is where it is. This is what we're trying to protect, and now my son will protect, and then his son, and then it's gone on for generations. That's what these people are, I guess. But they're not very good at it.
Honestly, that knight isn't very good at hiding. He's like, I'm gonna hide in this cave. But also, could you build a giant outdoor building into the face of the cave so that nobody knows I'm here?
Well, do you know what that is? That's Petra. It's very famous.
Yeah, it is very famous. And
so that's a set piece that they were able, because they're George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, to be like, why don't we use Petra? That'd be awesome. It's just cool. It's already there. They don't even have to build it. So that's fun.
It is. These are meant to be fun movies, and I have fun watching them.
I certainly hope you do.
Before this rewatch, I just remembered liking them, but I was never like a fan. And this really rekindled my love for this franchise.
Oh, I was a huge fan, man. God, I loved it so much.
Yeah.
Like, I had the hat. We went to Disney World, and we saw the Indiana Jones thing, like where the guy plays Indiana Jones. It was very cool. There's spikes coming out of the ground, and he's got to move this way, and the ball comes down, and all that fun stuff. And I bought the hat. My dad bought me the hat, so I had an Indiana Jones hat for years. It didn't really fit anymore once I got a little older, but I was using it as a prop on a movie that we shot years ago, and one of the extras stole it. He didn't take it off when he went home. He just left it on because I think he liked it. Just some old dude. I know where he lives, but I'll let it go. So they go to Brussels, right? It is Brussels. It's his castle. His father's there. This also, I think, marks like the only time you'll ever hear Harrison Ford do an accent. So when he pretends to be that highfalutin German art critic or whatever who came to check out the tapestries. You have beautiful tapestries. Yes. And the guy responds like, our tapestries are amazing. Like, he's so taken back that his tapestries wouldn't be as good as we thought. That was pretty funny. But he does that. He finds his father. And it's Sean Connery. Who knew?
This is where we figure out that Elsa's a Nazi because she turns on them.
Yeah. Henry Jones Sr. and Henry Jones Jr. both sleep with the same girl. That's comedy gold.
That was
I love that part.
Very funny.
He's like, how did you know she was a Nazi? He's like, she talks in her sleep. And that is all they say about it. It's just an amazing line.
Yeah.
We got to get to the end of this movie. So where do we go from here?
Yeah, we have a whole nother movie to talk about. Oh. The Joneses, Sean Connery and Harrison Ford, escape this castle. They fight Nazis. They end up escaping. And then we get the worst chase scene in the history of movies. There's probably worse, but I was bored to death with this action set piece. I don't know about you.
On the motorcycle?
The motorcycle chase is literally, there's no suspense in the way that it's filmed. And it's literally just them driving and other motorcycles following them. Yeah. Like, they're just a lot of wide shots. And so you just kind of slowly watch them driving on the road. And it just struck me at how lazy it was.
Back in 1989, I don't know if people had seen chases like that before. So I think you have to kind of put yourself in the time period this came out. A lot of car chases.
They did not.
I don't know if they really had motorcycle chases. And it's great when he shoves that pole in the guy's wheel and makes him flip over. I mean, it's very dramatic. I don't know what you're talking about because these don't go on so long that it bores me. Where do they go after the motorcycle chase? That's the cool thing about Sean Connery is that he's a believer. To be fair, Indy should be a believer too because of what he saw in both Temple of Doom and Raiders of the Lost Ark. But he plays Indiana Jones, who is always skeptical no matter what he's gone through. So he just wants to get home, but Sean Connery makes a very impassioned plea for like, this is the greatest archaeological find. This beats your crappy Ark of the Covenant find. This is the Holy Grail, which I don't think it does. I kind of think the Ark of the Covenant would be more important than the Holy Grail. No offense, because the Ark of the Covenant is Old Testament. All the Jesus stuff's New Testament, and people are kind of like, on the fence about the New Testament thing. But all religions get together with the Old Testament, at least.
And he drank through a lot of cups through his life. I'm not sure why that cup would be special.
I know. It's the last one, I guess. Well, it's special because that is then what Joseph of Arimathea captured the blood.
To his body.
Yeah, when the guard stuck the spear into his side to see if he was still alive, Joseph of Arimathea caught the blood of Jesus in that cup.
Why did he do that?
Well,
oh shit! Somebody get a cup. He's bleeding.
That's how they treated the Son of God in their eyes. Like, it was, every part of him was like, it was like when you're a hunter and you kill a deer. Like, if you're a good hunter, you eat everything. Like, you use everything, and that's how they treated Jesus's body. Like, they weren't just gonna let it go. Every bit is important. They're not just gonna take the teeth and ditch the body. You know what I mean? Anyway.
Holy shit.
So this was Catholic school. Don't you remember any of this stuff? Yeah.
I remember
all this stuff.
Bits.
This is where all my guilt came from, these kind of stories. I'm still working up through that guilt, Catholic guilt. Anyway.
So they decide to go to Berlin to get his book back.
That's right, because Marcus was kidnapped at the library, and he had the book for some reason. So his book is literally in Nazi territory, Berlin, and they got to go get it. And it's a great one because I love how torn Elsa is with this whole thing, and that she turns out to be a Nazi, but she's an intellectual and she's a scientist and she's a professor, whatever she is. And she's torn about the book burning thing because isn't that inherently what was effed up about the Nazis, is that they wanted to be this ultimate race, and yet they had a complete fear of knowledge. And that was shown so eloquently, I thought, in this movie with the burning of the books. And she's very torn about that because, like, why would you burn books?
See, I took that in a completely different way.
Did you?
I took that
What is the way you
this
took
movie?
It?
I took that as Indiana Jones, part of my language audience. Indiana Jones fucked this woman, and he fucked her so good that he broke the Nazi in her. And so after she had this amazing sex, that's when she questioned her entire life.
Wow, this is
and that's
hardcore.
why we see her watching all this in a daze. Like,
I don't, you know what? If anything, Indy. I think a better way to think of it is that I think Sean Connery was a better lay than his son was. That's a more fun way to think about it, and that Indy's got to deal with that.
I take that I think about it my way. She slept with old Henry, Sean Connery, and she still let him get kidnapped.
Or they're the same person to her, and she got to get both sides of it. Like, she got the old version, she got the young version. They're just the same Dr. Jones as far as she's concerned. Yeah, you know what? My 8-year-old mind never went there when I first saw this movie, but that's okay. I mean, we can rethink about things when we get older. And
this book burning was a very famous Nazi event. They just fudged the dates. I think it happened in like 1935.
Sure.
Like, there's one super famous one, and
that Hitler may have actually been at. Sure. I mean, that's a goofy thing too, is that he meets Hitler, but it's funny, right? Hitler signs his book.
Yeah, that was funny.
And that is Spielberg magic there. Like, he just has a way of building that suspense and then making it funny. It reminded me of when Marianne and Belloc were in the tent in Raiders of the Lost Ark, and that crazy Nazi comes in and he pulls out the little S&M thing. You think it's going to be some like torture device, and it turns out to just be a coat hanger. Like, that is a callback to the first movie, in that he's face to face with Hitler. Hitler grabs the book because Hitler clearly knows that's the book that's going to find him the Holy Grail. But no, he's just signing it. But why would you sign a book that you're going to burn anyways? I don't know. All right, never mind. It would have been funnier if he had grabbed it and then like tossed it into the fire. And Indy's like, hi, Hitler. Jeez, what a goof. So he gets out of there. He gets the book back.
He gets out of there, and they get going to get Marcus back. So the end of the movie is set up. They now know where the Grail is, and now it's a race between them and the Nazis to get there. Mm-hmm. And how do they leave Germany?
They're getting on the blimp. the Zeppelin. Yeah, and they are going to be found out, so they have to jump in the emergency plane that's connected to it.
I mean, yes, this is true, but we're going to skip over my favorite error in the movie, where they sit down at their chair and Sean Connery picks up a newspaper and opens it, and it is clearly upside down.
I forgot to look. I'm sorry about that.
And I recorded the video, like it's on Twitter.
Oh, okay.
It's a whole scene where he's looking at the paper and Harrison Ford's talking, and he moves the paper to respond to him. It's there, and I have a hard time with knowing that Steven Spielberg had to have seen it was upside down.
Yeah, but maybe he did. I mean, you see something like that in the editing booth, and you just think it's funny, so you go with it.
Harrison Ford had to have seen it clearly. And he's like, hey, your paper's upside down. And I imagine Sean Connery being like, I nailed the Shane, let's move on. You know? Yeah.
Hey, it was probably the best scene. It was his best take. You got to go with it. There's a lot of... I mean, you go to any website that has continuity errors. There's probably 1,000 in Last Crusade.
I actually went through them trying to verify.
Yeah.
And, I mean, there was obviously some, but there wasn't a ton. But it was the most glaring to me.
I like the father-son talk they have on the Zeppelin. And then what does he say? Oh, he says, like... Connery says, like, well, you left right when you were getting interesting. Like, he just doesn't understand what it's like being a father. He just has no idea. And that's what I like about it. But then they come to the conclusion where it's just like, well, what are you complaining about? Here we are. Let's go find this thing. And then I think they come together at that moment where they're just like, fine, you're right. We both like to do the same thing. Let's just find the goddamn cup.
Yeah.
So they got to get out of there because they're going to get found out. Yeah. And that's a fun scene.
Yeah,
the plane with some classic blue screen. Doesn't look that great, but it had a great 80s feel to it, you know, both them flying.
There's some German planes going after them because they realized they were on the blimp, and they shoot them down. And
Connery saves the day by the birds on the beach.
Yep, using his umbrella to scare the birds into the plane. And yeah, after that, I feel like
they steal a car.
Hard.
No, the car. They steal a car and then the car gets blown up. But where do they go from there? I can't remember.
Oh, we're just going to skip over this, that there's a poor man just living his life, and here comes the Jones guys, steal his car, and blow it up.
I don't think he was poor. I mean, the car seemed pretty nice. He was just fixing the flat.
It didn't seem that nice. Just saying.
So they somehow make it out of there. I can't recall how.
I feel like they just finished it and then we cut.
And the Germans have made a deal with a prince, you know, who has a kingdom in Egypt in the area where they're going to find the Grail as well. So then they get his soldiers and tanks and things like that. So that's how the Nazis are big and bad. They're on their way to the Grail. Indy and Henry have hooked up with John Rhys-Davies, right, who plays, can't remember his name, and they're on their way to the Grail too. And then there's a scene where they have to rescue Marcus, and then it's a crazy tank chase.
Yep. Yeah, there's a tank chase.
There's
a big battle with the big Nazi bad.
Another callback to the classic Raiders, you know, when he's fighting the guy on the plane. This one's on a tank. Yeah, it follows that.
And then the tank goes over the side of the cliff.
Yep.
They're all looking over the side, and they're sad because they don't see him, and they're mourning, and this is where we see him climb up.
So let's skip to the end because I feel like we got to... There's more things to cover, but turns out Donovan is working with the Nazis as well. Elsa's a Nazi. All the Nazis are there. Jones boys are there. Marcus and John Rhys-Davies, right? Everybody's just there at the Petra, which I don't know if is known as Petra in the movie, but it's wherever they are. He has to then use the book that his father wrote in order to go through the 3 trials in order to find the cup, because Donovan shoots his dad, and he says only by the power of the Grail can you save your father. So he's forced into this. So he, unlike the people that have no experience with doing booby traps, he survives, of course. He goes through the first trial, doesn't get his head cut off, goes through the second where he's supposed to spell out the name of Jesus. You know, I'm with you in that these things are only set up once. At least as far as the name of God goes. Like, once you break and fall through, well, that thing is now broken, so anybody else who's coming knows not to step there. But apparently he's the first person that ever made it through. Who made those?
Technical
I don't know.
marvel.
This always happens.
The Knights?
We talked about this in Raiders, and that archaeologists love Indiana Jones, and it was such a big movie to them when they were kids, and it made them want to be archaeologists today. But they always say whatever Indy's after is not nearly as cool or important as the amazing technological feats that were created in these booby traps. Like, that's what archaeologists would be most enamored with. I just thought that was always funny. But they take that to like a crazy degree in the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, to the point where it does get obnoxious to me and annoying. But we'll get there. So and then the last thing, he has to do the leap of faith, and he is prepared to die, because I remember watching that and not knowing what's going to happen, and I'm just like, he's just going to die. He just stepped right out, and he had faith, and I think that showed a lot of character in Indy, even though he could have very well died.
And that was a great special effect. I loved that special effect as a kid.
Yeah, and that's something nobody ever saw, but it was great. I don't know if that would actually work that way in real life. It seemed like if you just like moved your head to the side, you'd be like, oh, it's really a ladder.
It's just been those 3 nights. They were responsible for all of this.
I guess so.
And then we get to where the movie just stops making any kind of fucking sense.
Don't let the old night scare you.
So we get to the final chamber, where the last living of these 3 Knight brothers is
hundreds of years old.
Hundreds of years. I mean, thousands in theory.
It was more like King Arthur time. So it was like 1300s, 1400s, 1500s, somewhere around there. So like 700 years old could have been.
Old.
Or 5, whatever.
So he's got this setup when he has to have been practicing this pitch quite a bit. People are going to walk in. He knows this, and he's like, all right, they've already beaten the 3 tests, and they're here. They need one more test. What should it be? I'm going to just put a bunch of fucking other cups in the room. Where did these other cups come from?
I don't know. He brought them with him.
Who gave the other cups evil powers? That's my biggest
This is God
issue.
again. This is always God. God is the answer to these, to at least to the first and third movie, and that he will punish you if you are of an evil heart. So I submit to you that even if Indy had chosen wrong, he wouldn't have been punished. But a Nazi is a great enemy because God will punish the Nazis. And that's what happens to Donovan at the end, where he chooses. Elsa does it on purpose. She says, let me pick. So she picks this beautiful cup. And Donovan's, of course, like, oh, yes, this is the cup of a king. He drinks the water. He melts before her eyes. He's dead.
And if it's the water...
But it's a nice twist that Indy is like, this is the cup of a carpenter, this little clay thing.
Okay, so they didn't find the cup there. They brought the cup there. So why is this seal a thing? Why is the water being magical a thing?
I don't know about
when
the
it's
seal.
the knights that picked it.
I'm with you on the seal. That is a jump in logic for me.
An elaborate fucking booby trap.
I'm with you on that. That why is there a seal there? Why can't you take the cup beyond it? Apparently you can't. But he uses the holy water in the cup. He gets back. He heals his father. His father's fine. And Elsa wants the cup. So she takes it beyond the seal in her greed, and the whole place starts falling apart. She dies. They all make it out. They let the cup go because his father finally realizes that the true treasure is fatherhood. Something like that.
Is the trip along the way.
Yeah. And they make it out. So, I mean, holy cow, the movie is so good and it's such a fun adventure. And if they had wrapped up Indiana Jones in that way, which is what we all thought they did, perfectly fine. I was happy with it. I never expected another Indiana Jones. Like, I never looked for one.
No, neither did I. It was my favorite movie as Indiana Jones as a kid.
Yep.
But now as an adult, I think they do a better job with the other ones.
Here's the thing, people wrongly believe that Last Crusade is the best Indiana Jones, and I don't fault them in that because I probably was there too, because it's more fun. It's the funnest movie because of Sean Connery and Harrison Ford together. But when you get older, you realize that not only is Raiders the best story and the best put together film, it's also, in my opinion, Spielberg's absolute best movie. So that's why Raiders is hands down the finest Indiana Jones.
My official order is Raiders, Temple, Kingdom, Crusade.
Okay.
Now we move on to Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Yeah.
A popular thing.
I was going to say that came out in 89, right? And Crystal Skull was like 2007 maybe?
2008. 19 years later. So this is modern filmmaking where they want to profit from all franchises that people loved, and so there had to be this 4th movie, which had been talked about forever. But because of the arrangement between Spielberg, Lucas, and Ford, Lucas was always the holdout. He was never happy with where the story was, and eventually they got the pitch to where Lucas would sign off. And the popular conversation was always that they wanted to pass the torch. That was very relevant in the news media. And my argument here, with time having passed, this movie came out 13 years ago, with time having passed and that conversation quieted down, I was able to appreciate this movie for just what it was and not the hype.
That's
and
good.
If you take away the hype, this is a very solid entry in the Indiana Jones franchise. Watching them all back to back to back to back, I was amazed at how well Harrison Ford recaptured the spirit of Indiana Jones. And because I do a thing where I can't always tell where an actor is a good actor or not.
Yeah,
and I think Harrison Ford is good in this movie. He's old, but at no point do I feel like he's frail. I feel like he's
I'm with you.
able to do the stunts that we see on the screen. I don't know if that's going to happen in this fifth one.
Much hype was around this movie, and that people were so disappointed, and it was hard to look at it with a critical eye. Taking away all of that, it's still a very bad movie. I don't know what the hell you were talking about. You have some good points there. Harrison Ford's great. He definitely recaptures Indiana Jones. Everything's fine about it. The movie is stupid and bad, okay? This is where we are right now. It's not good, and I'll tell you why very briefly. Everything is fine with it. I love everything about it until they find the actual skull in that graveyard. Once they find that skull, it becomes a talky, boring film, never recaptures the excitement because all the chase scenes that lead after that are horribly staged with CGI and they're goofy beyond belief. And then once all that goofiness ends, they're in the midst of this alien, but they're not alien. They're actually interdimensional creature, whatever, malarkey. And then it ends with this another CGI eyesore, and then you're done. That's the whole movie to me. Everything was going so well, and then when they find that skull, it just becomes boring and never recaptures the excitement. That's that movie to me in a nutshell.
I can accept your criticism of this film, even though you're wrong.
Okay. I hear that. Let me just chime in with one more thing, in that I heard some of those Lucas things that he was the holdout. But if you listen to Spielberg was the holdout. Because really? Lucas came to him in the 90s and said, like, I want to do Indiana Jones and Aliens. And this was like mid-90s, like maybe like 94, 95. And he's just like, yeah, I don't know. I already did 2 Alien movies. You know, I did Close Encounters, I did E.T. I just don't know if, like, he wasn't saying no, like that we shouldn't go there. He was just saying like, I just didn't really think. And then he said that Independence Day happened, and he loved Independence Day and what they did. And here's spaceships during the day, and they're way bigger than the mothership in his movies. And he was just amazed by Independence Day. So he called Lucas up and said, maybe Aliens should work, and we should look at Roland Emmerich's film, look at that for inspiration for the new Indiana Jones one. And then Lucas was like, okay, I'm going to run with that for a while. And then he like took a couple years thinking about it. And then when he got back to Spielberg was like, I kind of am rethinking this, and I think maybe Aliens has been played out. Let's not do Aliens. So then, like, Spielberg turned it down again, and then he claims that Harrison Ford is the one that started talking to both of them again and said, I want to do another Indiana Jones movie. What do you got? And then Lucas was like, I want to do Aliens, but Spielberg doesn't want to do Aliens, so they're not aliens, they're interdimensional beings. And then Spielberg was like, that's an interesting take on it. Let's do that. And then that got the ball rolling to what we have now.
We're not going to get too much into the plot of
Let's
this
get into
movie.
the plot. Why not? Why can't we get into the plot? Let's talk about the plot.
Because
Let's go.
The plot
Let's go.
is the exact same as every other Indiana Jones movie.
Explain. What do you mean?
Guess what? There is a secret hunt by, not Nazis this time, but communists.
Makes sense. 1957.
Exactly 19 years later. And I'm assuming that they're going to do the exact, like, it's been 13, 14 years.
Yeah.
No, because
well,
they keep
it's
saying
age
it's gonna be
appropriate.
around 69. Yeah. Anyway, cookie cutter formula here. The bad guy is looking for an ancient artifact to do a bad thing. And they hire an archaeologist who disappears. And then they get Indiana Jones to come and finish the work because he's the closer. And then Indy doesn't help them, but is trying to find the thing at the same time. They have a bunch of battles, and they have a resolution where the bad guy and the good guy are at the end with the artifacts, and the good guy wins.
Yeah. So my argument is that this is bullshit because they already did that again in Last Crusade. You can't do it again. You can't always do this every time there's an Indiana Jones movie. And that's why this one fails.
And I'm with you. when there's this much of a break between movies, audience tastes change. And they, for a bit, pull a Blues Brothers 2000, where rather than adapting the material for today's audiences, they give you a movie that is something right out of the 80s, and modern day audiences, they can't accept that anymore. That's not what they're used to seeing.
But at the same time, they have movies based on adventure serials from the 30s that they're now transporting to the 50s and then trying to sell it to an audience of 2008. That's a hard thing to do. And another thing that Lucas wanted to do is that since it was the 50s, he wanted to take those serials from the 30s and add in the B-movie science fiction movies of the 50s. That's what he was going for, and I feel like that didn't even pan out. Like, it didn't feel right to me.
I see a lot of ideas, like with The Force Awakens in here, where they take the basic story premise from Raiders or whatever, and they just update it for modern times.
Yeah.
But it's not modern times, it's the 50s. And the 50s might be the least cool decade. Like, there hasn't been a lot of 50s, what's that word when, like, right now everybody loves the 80s?
Nostalgia.
There's not a
50s.
lot of,
yeah,
there's not a lot of nostalgia for the 50s. So when you see
not so much in the movies or music. Well, I would say Lucas is right in that the bad sci-fi movies of the 50s are cult movies, because most of them, and this is another thing that the movie tries to comment on but drops for some reason, is a lot of the sci-fi movies of the 50s were comments on the Red Scare and the blacklisting of Hollywood and the House Un-American Committee meetings and stuff like that, where people were turning on each other because they thought they were communists. Like, a lot of those great sci-fi movies that weren't that great because of the special effects and stuff like that. That's why they're silly. But they were all comments on that. So that's what The Kingdom of the Crystal Skull starts out doing. Let's just start from the beginning. So Cate Blanchett is a communist. They kidnap Indiana Jones and his friend Mac, who are old war buddies, because this has been years in World War II and everything. He's like a colonel in World War II. They bring him to Area 51. There you go. There's a great staple of sci-fi lore, because they want to find an alien that apparently crashed there in Roswell. Boom. There's the second sci-fi lore. And Indy explains that he was one of the people that were there to, like, investigate Roswell, but it was all very hush-hush, and he was blindfolded, and he didn't really know what the hell he was doing there. I guess he never saw an alien. So they have this great chase in Area 51. It's a callback to Raiders because that's where the Ark was captured. I love all that. That's great. There's also like a secret testing base underneath it. That's great too. I love secret labs. They get sent on that rocket ship, another testing thing, a rocket thing. I love it. It's great. Everything's great about this movie. I'm totally with them. Mac turns out to be a double agent. He's betraying Indiana Jones. Okay, cool. Ray Winstone is always a bad guy. Obviously, he was going to be. Then the nuclear explosion. Like, he's in the middle of, a testing site. It doesn't make a lot of sense why he would get in there. It's the same thing with, like, Sandman, Kane Marco in Spider-Man 3, how he falls into this thing that they were, like, doing at night. And there was no fence, that really would keep anybody out. And they have no idea that somebody's there, but they're going to blow it anyways. It doesn't make any sense, but I'm totally fine with it. He gets in a lead-lined fridge. He survives a nuclear blast. That's how you one-up Indiana Jones. That's your cold open. It didn't bother me. It turned a lot of people off.
I know. I was a big fan.
And that shot where he's on that chain and he, like, comes down and he, like, kicks that guy into the window. That is a great stuntman thing, if you remember that. I don't know. It just looks amazing to me. Spielberg really knocked it out of the park there, at least for that first, like, 20 minutes. Anyway, I'm just trying to say, like, there's a lot of this movie I love. And anyway, so, but the FBI guys I'm getting back to what I was talking about. The FBI guys are, like, questioning Indiana Jones. Like, maybe you're not so American. And I think that was a great way to go with this movie. They were doing this whole blacklist kind of thing, this whole Red Scare thing. And that's why he got fired from his position, is because he's being investigated. And then it made me angry because that's the only reason they were doing that, is because they needed to get him fired. They just wanted to get him fired so he'd leave. And it was pointless. And I thought they could have went, I don't know what they would have done with it, but I think they could have went further with the whole communist thing.
Yeah, that was just these movies you can watch them saying, oh, they had to do that so they could get here.
But it didn't bother me as much in the other movies. It bothered me in this one, though.
Oh, so you're saying you're having issues with the internal logic of the movie?
No, it's not the internal logic of the movie. It is the storytelling. It's the script writing of the movie is what I have a problem with. The other thing, and so he meets Mutt, who's Shia LaBeouf's character. Again, much like Topher Grace in Spider-Man 3, didn't turn me off as much as everybody, because everybody just hated Shia LaBeouf because of the Transformers movie. They were tired of him and all of his no.
No.
You know, he plays the Marlon Brando type. He's some badass, and they do a good job of him taking offense about everything that Indy's saying, you know, and Indy's just like, calm down all the time. And then they have that great greaser and the prep fight. It goes really well. The chase through the college thing is a great throwback to the other Indiana Jones movies. Everything's working. Well, I'll let you take over for a while, so because he's got to talk about Ox, his friend Ox, and everything.
Yeah, and there's just a standard, another archaeologist who'd always been looking for El Dorado, the city of gold. So he's gone missing. No, he went crazy.
Yeah.
Mutt's mom went to find him.
Mary.
Yeah, Mary
Williams.
That is just okay.
Yeah. To be fair, he just says Mary. What's your mom's name?
Yeah.
Mary Williams. Would he make the leap and say, is it by any chance Marion Ravenwood? Is that your mother? I probably wouldn't.
Do you know how this movie could have been better with
Please
the
tell me.
casting choice if they didn't use Shia LaBeouf and they used Short Round?
Yeah, right. Well, that would have made no sense.
Like what is it? It's 13, 14 years later.
Well,
And
you
so
would.
he would've
You
been-
mean you would have to drop the whole him being his kid thing?
Yeah,
But obviously Short
just
Round's
get
not
rid
his
of the
kid.
kid. And they give the franchise to Short Round. That would have been cutesy and clever, and I would have been okay with it.
See that? Yeah, I don't know. He was never an Indiana Jones type. Anyway, I think people were a little too hung up on the fact that Shia LaBeouf was supposed to be the new Indiana Jones, and I think they make it very clear at the end of the movie that he wasn't going to be.
Yep.
So that was another thing that you kind of had to let go. Settle down, people. He's not the new Indiana Jones. There's only one Indiana Jones. So yeah, so Mary, his mom, went to find Oxley, who's an old friend of Indiana Jones. She also got captured, was somehow, I don't remember, able to write a letter or something to her son, Mutt, and say, you got to find Indiana Jones. He's the only person that can help us. And that's how they all come together.
And they end up in South America for, I think, the first time in Indiana Jones' time.
Because he starts doing what he always does. He picks up the slack that this other expert left. He knew that Oxley was looking for El Dorado, and with Indiana Jones' critical eye, he's able to look at Oxley's findings and piece it together better, and he realizes that, he found the conquistador's grave, which will lead us further to El Dorado. So let's go to that place in South America. They get to South America, they go into the grave, and they make the mistake of bringing the natives back. I don't know why they would do that after they learned that lesson from Temple. I don't know why they would go in that route, because the communists are another great enemy, much like the Nazis. You can't quite be as fuck all communists as you can like fuck all Nazis, because Nazis are like pure evil, but you can still kind of take the communism thing pretty far. It's just that now that we're friends now with the Russians, to some degree, like there's not a Cold War going on anymore. It probably would still piss them off that they're now the enemies in this movie, and I think it did. I don't think it played very well with the Russian audience, because they were angry that communists were the enemy.
Yeah, I could see that, even though they've definitely done a good job of trying to make Russia look like a villain again. Maybe they do that just so movies have a good villain. Who knows?
Maybe. So here's my problem where the movie goes off the rails, is that he finds the skull, which doesn't look that great. I've never thought it was that great of a prop. It's hidden behind one of the bodies of the conquistadors, just sitting there. Okay. But they put it together that Oxley had been there and had already taken the skull to El Dorado, but couldn't get any farther. So he brought it back. What? This is bad writing. And then they just talk. And he walks around with the skull and goes, and he starts putting points together. Okay, so if he did this, that means, and then, so he found, and they just talk, and I'm just like, this is not Indiana Jones. This is not the way his mind works. This is not the way you would write dump exposition at us, and that you took a total cop-out as a screenwriter and said, well, he knows all this stuff because he already went there and then came back. I just think that's so dumb.
You know, these movies are set piece after set piece where Indy figures out something and that's how we move on. And yeah, you are right. Like, this is more exposition heavy than the others.
Does it a very big disservice. And then from there, they go... What happens after that? I can't recall. I just watched this last night and I was so bored at that moment. I
I know, like it's only been a week and this movie's starting to fade. They do a lot of chases with the communists and Cate Blanchett. She gets the skull, they get the skull.
Somehow they end up where Oxley is, and they meet we finally meet Mutt's mother, Mary.
Yes.
But how do they get to that campsite?
They get double crossed, don't they? No, that's not it.
Well, Ray Winstone's character Mac does come back in to double cross to find him again, right? Yeah, that's right, because he was following him in South America when they were looking for the grave, so he was on his back. And I can't recall what happens after they find the skull, but somehow they get captured again. Okay, let's just skip that. They get captured and they're in this place in South America with the rest of the communists, and Oxley's there. He lost his mind because apparently staring at the skull affects your brain or something. It's too much psychic energy or something. Is that what was going on?
Yeah, there's some psychic stuff there. Yeah.
And it turns out that Mary, his mom, is actually Marion Ravenwood from Raiders. And Karen Allen's all good and everything, but she's just, I don't know, it's kind of a nothing character in this one. She was just there to give Indy some shit. This is also what bothered me, is that he was always a little jokey with her in Raiders, but it's like he lost an edge. He just became a bumbling grandpa in this one. Oh, and then the quicksand thing with the snake. Oh, God, it's horrible. Who would grab a snake?
Snake is played out. Yeah.
Dumb.
They could have dropped that.
So dumb. But because she thinks she's going to die, she tells him that it's his son. So we learn that Mutt's actually Indy's son, which we all kind of probably knew. And then another thing that bothered me is that we know this skull is alien, right? Like right with the first time he picks it up, it's an alien skull. Yeah, and yet it takes him the whole movie until they're finally before El Dorado when he holds the skull up. And then like the audience is supposed to get it at that moment that, oh my God, it's an alien skull. But I'm like, we all knew that a half an hour ago. Like, where were you? So they escape. They go on a crazy car ride, which is another staple of Indiana Jones. But because it's CGI now, it looks awful. And it's totally played out. It's really dumb. Shia LaBeouf fences, which is stupid. He takes over the Indiana Jones role, at least for this part, and it's not entertaining. And then he swings with the monkeys on vines. That's dumb. I like the ant thing. The ant thing's fine, except it's a little overboard. I don't know, killer. I mean, I know ants get that big, but I don't think they would take a body underground with them to eat it.
Yeah, the ant thing was fine, but yeah, that's just splitting hairs. That's like the magic box. That's
exactly. I'm with you on that one. Yeah. So then they make it to El Dorado, right?
By driving a car into a lake and continuing to drive it. Oh my God, the lake! Boat.
It could have been better than the inflatable raft out of the airplane, but nope. They're like, we're gonna make you even hate it more than that, even though that was pretty hated, by having them drop down 3 waterfalls. Like, it just was so stupid. Come on, you're with me on that.
It was, it was fine.
God damn, what a horrible movie.
It was what it was. So there's a big waterfall, and there's a big skull in the waterfall, but you can only see the skull if you're in the waterfall. Mm-hmm. Then they go into the skull, and it's this wide open field, and it's an old city.
And the savages again.
El Dorado. Savages. God, quit using savages.
We didn't need them because they didn't really do anything. They just were there to give them a little trouble. They ran away from them, and then the communists killed them all. It just was pretty pointless.
Yeah, they murdered all of those savages too. Like, that sucked. That was the only part of the movie where I was like, yeah, this is.
We didn't need that.
But no, they get to this secret alien room. And all of this plays on that old idea that there's no way the Egyptians built the pyramids on their own. There's no way the Mayans built these temples on their own. How are they separated over such a large time, but they look similar? All of these old questions that we have. And so they're answering it with, there were aliens, but they weren't really aliens. They were interdimensional beings.
That looked like aliens.
This is the part of the movie that's the most of a stretch, is that these bones were really one being, and it was alive, and it was separated, because like you see all of the bodies merged together into one.
See, I don't think they were one. I think that was a visual thing for the audience to say that they were a hive mind and that they put them all together just in that moment. But I think there were many, because here's another thing that I don't quite understand. Because the body they found in Area 51, she had a skull. She claimed there was hundreds of them all around. There was 2 in Soviet Union. So they didn't need those skulls. She just left it on an operating table. She needed that skull in particular that the conquistadors stole. So that's the one they had. But why wouldn't anyone work? I don't know. So he gave her the gift of knowledge, but it was too much
Yeah.
for any human to handle and her head explode, right? Or she vaporized or something. But does that mean that all those communists they got sucked up into the sky portal? They just went into a different dimension, right? They didn't like die. They're just floating around in the aliens dimension, right? And then you get your saucer at the end. But the saucer is not played like you're watching a bad B movie. The saucer is played like there's literally a flying saucer in an Indiana Jones movie, and it just does not fit. Could I get a pass at this? Like, could I write this movie like that? I feel like I could do something that would work. I would take that first half hour and steer it in the right direction. I don't know what that would be yet, but there's got to be a way to really make it a fun sci-fi B movie mixed with Indiana Jones. And they just took it in a way that it just didn't work for me, man.
Like, I don't know if you can use communists interchangeably with Nazis in the same way. You never felt like, oh, if they get a hold of these skulls, it means the end of the world. Well,
here's the thing with the communists is that they didn't need to make them evil. They could just have made them on the other side. That's why I think the massacre of the Mayans or whoever they were was such a raw take, man. They didn't need to do that. They could have just been on the other side because that was the Cold War. So we think we're the superior country, and we want this knowledge, not because we're going to destroy you, but because that's what Cate Blanchett says. Like, with this power before us, we could control your leaders, and we can make you launch your own nuclear weapons against yourself, whatever, you know. I just think that took it too far. I think they could have just used the communists in more of a subtle way, like, you're Americans, we're communists, we need to find this first, like the space race kind of thing. We need to be first.
There was no reason for Cate Blanchett to know about the skulls, to think that there's a weapon there. It feels like they always bastardize old myths to make it work. In Last Crusade, we had the merging of the Holy Grail, but also with the where you ever find the Well of Life.
Yeah, the Fountain of Youth or something.
Fountain of Youth, yes. They
right?
merged the two ideas. And so here we have El Dorado and then aliens merged, and it's, I don't know.
Yeah, the building of the pyramids with the City of Gold. And then they got to one up how ridiculous that was, or how much that didn't work by having Indy and Marion get married at the end. I mean, to be fair, they're both old, right? What are they going to date? Get together and date? I don't know. I guess, like, stepping back, I would be like, yeah, I guess they could get married. I mean, that would probably, if they're going to rekindle their romance, maybe they would just get married.
Because, yeah, didn't Indy leave her at the altar? Because he's still Indiana Jones.
Come a long way since then, I guess. So now he's just ready to settle down. And so, like, why is he assistant dean? And that other dean got his job back, Jim Broadbent. Like, is it because whatever they did cleared his name with the FBI? But it didn't really. How did the FBI know anything about this? What is happening in this movie?
He's Henry Jones. Come on, man. Henry Jones Jr. Yeah, okay, fine. This movie is just as bad as Last Crusade. How about that? I'll give you that.
I will give you this, that Last Crusade does mess with the internal logic of Indiana Jones films in order to move the plot along, but not in that drastic of a way. This movie has bad screenwriting. That's what I don't like about this. Last Crusade has great screenwriting, but yeah, it does maybe mess with logic sometimes, and that bothered you, and I get that. This movie is just bad. Like, it's not written well at all. So I don't care what logic it messes with. It's just not a good story.
Would Last Crusade have still been good if Sean Connery wasn't in it?
No, because it would have been a total retread of Raiders. Like, Connery's the thing that sets it apart from Raiders. So yeah, maybe you're thinking of, if you're going to reenact Raiders, this was a better movie to do it in, Kingdom of Crystal Skulls, than Last Crusade. Whereas I say Last Crusade came first and already reacted it, so you can't react it again. That's just lazy screenwriting. And that's where I'm at with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. But you're seeing them as, say everything came out at the same time, Crystal Skull reenacted it better than Last Crusade.
Yeah.
But I still don't agree with you.
I mean, imagine if we were being critical of, if we were actually thoughtfully being critical and not just fanboying for the first Star Wars sequel of the new era.
Force Awakens.
Right?
Yeah, you already mentioned it earlier.
I mean, that's the least original movie ever made, but we love it. But for whatever reason, they're not able to capture. No, that movie is
I actually dislike it because they kill Han Solo in it. That's what I was not happy about. Is there anything more to say about this? We love Indiana Jones, and I'm excited for a new one. I think that's perfectly fine. And much like Last Crusade, I think that they've learned from the mistakes of the previous movie, and now they'll probably do a better one.
To finish out the episode, let's just be done with Indiana Jones. To finish out the episode, Ghostbusters trailer, that is what we should have left off with.
That's true. What do you want to talk? Yeah, what do you think about that?
It has me thinking a lot, and if you haven't seen the Ghostbusters Afterlife trailer, go and watch it. But it shows us a movie leaning heavily on the nostalgia of the original movie while not really doing anything else, is what the preview shows. It looks like a perfectly serviceable movie.
I don't even see it leaning into the nostalgia. I feel like it's a very modern looking film, and it's made for the Stranger Things crowd. It just happens to have Ghostbuster stuff in it, and nobody really understands what that is, but somehow it's going to be mixed in. But it just looks like a modern ghost movie. I don't know whether it's a horror movie or a comedy or a drama. It's just a modern coming-of-age story is how it felt.
It reeked of Stranger Things. You're completely right.
Well, it's hard not to see it when the stars is the face of it. So what are you going to say?
It's like Ghostbusters Stranger Things, and they gave so much away in that plot, or at least what appears to be the basic rundown of that movie.
I think that they're going to find a way to... I just think it's too obvious how it goes. I think that they're actually going to pull something. I think this is misdirection.
God, I don't give them enough credit.
You know who those people are, the descendants of? Louis Tully. Rick Moranis' character. I'm serious.
Who?
That's gonna be the twist. Is that Louis Tully is her father, not Egon.
No.
Just stick with it. I have no basis. But they're not giving it away. No one will ever come out and say that they're Egon's kids, but we all know they are. That's why I'm thinking they're not.
Well, they basically did.
No.
Or I mean, they are just alluding to him at this point.
That's what I'm saying. They're only alluding to it. So this is misdirection.
Those are his grandkids. That's an adult woman. They do everything except for
something's
got to.
If that's Egon's daughter, then she would only be 30, like 31, right? Or 30 at this time.
That looks close, and the kids are younger, yeah.
But really, I mean, who's the mother? Like, who did Egon meet in between Ghostbusters 2, where he was just working on, in his little lab there? Like, I mean, somehow he had to meet somebody within like
That's
a year.
That's so going to be a test
probably.
tube. There's a test.
So this is like
there.
1990, maybe. So she's only like 30 years old, but she has kids that old. So something's going on here. I don't know.
Are you ready for the plot of the entire movie?
Yeah, go for it.
Egon, after the Ghostbusters break up, continues to monitor ghost activity. He finds in a well in Oklahoma, or wherever the fuck that is, that...
I think it is Oklahoma, yeah.
What's the name of the bad guy from the
Ivo
first one?
Shandor from the first movie, who was the guy, the cult leader that everybody worshipped, and they built that big skyscraper in New York as a conduit for psychokinetic activity.
Shandor is the name of the mining company.
That's where he originated from, yes.
Yep. And
so he went to do further investigations on where he came from, yeah.
This is another hot spot for activity where he could reach... Who's the bad guy? The flat top woman in the end.
Oh, Gozer.
Yeah. So this guy was looking for Gozer in Oklahoma, and Egon finds out that he'd actually found him. Gozer is going to be the bad guy in this movie because they kind of alluded to it, and they have the devil dogs back. But meanwhile, Egon had a daughter that he never knew about because he contributed a lot of his stuff to science. And what's-her-name finds out about the daughter, lets her know that she has a house in her dad's property because the dad just died or something. Whatever.
Well, it's been disrepaired, so it sticks with actual time, and that Egon died in like 2014, the same time Harold Ramis did. So it's probably been disused for the last 5 years or so.
Yeah.
That's my guess.
And now this family moves in. They discover that he's a Ghostbuster. They discover ghosts. They have wacky adventures. Paul Rudd's there trying to bang the mom. And then things get so bad that they call in the original Ghostbusters to help. The original Ghostbusters come in just for the ending. It's QD. None of them die or anything, but it's just this fun, heart-lifting thing, and they stop gozer, and they all celebrate Egon's life, and then it's over.
Now, if you're a Ghostbusters fan like I am, and you are, we all figured this out, right? Mm-hmm. So were we just gifted 2 trailers and a preview, which was pretty fun. I love the original preview, or the
original
teaser.
Preview was
where it gives all that away, and now that's the movie. That's why I think everything we've been shown is big misdirection, and it is leading us to all figure this out, and yet it is something completely different. Maybe some of those elements, obviously, but I think it is a lot of misdirection.
If there is misdirection in this movie, I would love it, but I'm not going to hold my breath.
There are elements to this movie we probably haven't even seen yet, and like case in point, they may even be in New York for half the film, but they're just not showing us any of that yet. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but that is something you can do with a trailer. Like there might be 3 more story elements to this film that we have seen nothing of. And if all of that's true and that you figured it out and I figured it out already and that's the movie we get, then I'm going to be greatly disappointed, but it'll probably be a fun film.
I think it's going to be a fun film, but I don't think it's going to be a very good sequel.
I also agree with you that it may be very disappointing as a Ghostbusters sequel, but I think it'll be a fine modern scary film or something.
And why I think that it is as face value as we see is because everybody's excited about Jason Reitman directing this movie.
Yeah.
But give me one reason why his body of work makes you think that he's going to make a fantastic Ghostbuster.
But why would Ivan Reitman's body of work make you think that Ghostbusters would have been such a success? I mean, he made Stripes. I don't really know what else. Anybody with talent, any director can make this movie. I'm not saying you have to be a certain kind of director who can make a Ghostbusters movie. Frankly, I was thinking about it. Like, just imagine if Dan Aykroyd had worked hard on getting Ghostbusters 3 actually made in the late 90s and in the year 2000. And he even got, like, Max Landis to direct it. Not Max Landis. The other Landis. John Landis. Like, wouldn't that have been great? Like, instead of Blues Brothers 2000, they could have made Ghostbusters 3. Like, why didn't they do that?
It could have worked.
A lot cheaper to make, probably. Do you know anything about his script in the 90s for Ghostbusters 3?
No.
So it was going to be Ramis and Aykroyd, and that was it. Like, it's just Egon and Ray, and like Ghostbusters was going downhill, and there just wasn't a lot of psycho activity. And somehow they're able to, like, in his movie Hell, it wasn't a place you went to. It was, if you look at one of those lenticular pictures and you look at it this way, you see like a happy face, and then if you turn it slightly, it'll become like a zombie face. You know, like those.
Yeah.
So that was his idea for New York. That there was Manhattan and Manhattan. And that you just needed to look at it in a different way, and hell was all around us all the time. It was just like a different dimension. So it was called Ghostbusters Hellbent, and it was about Egon and Ray battling creatures straight out of hell. It was bonkers. It was out of control, but it was something that he knew he needed $150 million to make, and it just never went anywhere. And then that became like numerous other scripts over the decades, and now I think Reitman came in with a brand new idea. So anyway, that's all. That's all I got.
What podcast was this when we started? Oh, yeah, it's our F-Boy recap series.
Yeah.
So right. Thanks for joining us. Stay tuned next week. Aaron, do you have any predictions? Do we think Marcus will get voted off?
Oh my God, is that really somebody who's on it, Marcus?
I have no idea. I've never seen it. No.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm just gonna say, I'm out.
Yeah, I'm also out. So goodbye until next week. Bye. Have a good day, everyone.